People aren't hearing the questions, so if I could get you to turn towards them, I'll kind of hold this here and you can ask them the question.
So our group, we had a lot of discussion, it was very good, but also we talked about Olympic coaches and professional coaches always say you need to do 10,000 of the same thing in order for it to be actually useful. And I was wondering if you could compare that quote to what you're saying here, because what I think you're saying here is much deeper than just do it 10,000 times and you're an expert. So I was wondering if you could comment on that.
I have a date tonight. I wonder where I'm going to take her. If I do that 10,000 times, will I get better? No. That's the answer. Focus, concentration on what you're doing at that moment. Momentariness, mindfulness of the moment. When you're doing your practice, whether it's sparring, whether it's poomsae, knitting, whatever your practice is, whatever your activity is, focus, concentration on the intricacies of that, you're going to get better. And you're going to get better in ways that are unique to you. I said knitting. I said knitting, this kind of thing can happen with knitting. And I said that to some elite competitors, my friends, Udo being one of them, and he harshly disagreed with me. What do you think? Knitting, being a good race car driver, being excellent at your hobby, and coming to the point of intuiting unique creative activities of your hobby, you can use this paradigm, right? Do you agree?
Yes.
I agree.
Okay, so some of my longtime friends said, but martial arts is different. It's real life. It's your life and death. I mean, you know that expression, one punch, one kill, from karate was slowly dissolved in the evolution of taekwondo sparring from what it was in the 50s to what it is now. So, let me show you a picture of somebody who's just sitting, and this is their practice.
Gotta move that thing.
Just sitting, 1963, a monk, a Buddhist monk in Vietnam. This is what got US into the Vietnam War. The monk was sitting in protest of the Catholic president in 1963 who was suppressing Buddhism. He made a political statement and he poured gasoline over himself and he sat there and burned to death and didn't move. Talk about willpower. He died in that position. And all he did his whole life was sit and meditate. Focus concentration on the precepts of Buddhism. Focus concentration on giving up the self, giving up the ego. He was able to do that by his practice of seated meditation.
So as a coach, I think I can definitely identify with the idea of, can you all hear me? You told me I think.
Go ahead, Dan.
I think I'm good on with you. So I totally identify with the idea of repetitive practice, and I think I'm okay.
He projects really well. We can hear
Here's
him.
the one guy we don't need
He
to
just needs to face the audience.
Yes, okay, I'll face this way. I completely identify with the idea of mindful practice. It's like everything, right? Like mindful practice versus just repetition for the sake of repetition. I think one thing that I've seen through reading through just various articles is the idea of trying to move the goalposts as a coach just a little past what someone's capable of, and the idea that yes, you should in your head be mindful so that the same thing, even though you're doing the same thing over and over again, you're still getting things out of it. I think that's important. But what place do you think, as a coach, kind of moving the goalpost to where you're just challenging the athlete or the student to, have to reach a little more for, what place does that have in your paradigm?
So Carter McDavid has a breakaway, and there's the whole team's in front of him, and he's never done these certain moves before, but he creatively does something that he's never done before, based on his long-time practice and his fierce competitiveness, to get past all four of them and score the goal. So he's pushed himself at that moment of opportunity. He's pushed himself, and he did do something creative. In a sport that is just a sport, this has Michael Jordan. He was sick that one time, scored 50 points while having the flu, and they went on to win the championships. Who can do that? Somebody with an amazing indomitable spirit, with amazing creativity and long-time practice, and the ability to push themselves, even in a team sport, to get something done that had to be done. So we can push ourselves. We want, from an individual perspective, we want us to push ourselves. Of course, we have, and we need coaches. But ultimately, in Buddhism, our development is our own responsibility.
There was a very good video of, I believe it's from a movie, I can't remember, but it was about something like a high school football team. And this one kid that wasn't trying hard enough. The coach was always disappointed because he knew what he could do, even though the football player couldn't. So he had him lay down and he had to crawl with, I can't remember, with another guy on his back or whatever. And he said, "How far do you think you can go?" And he said, "Well, I think I can make it here." And he says, "Really? Well, let's see if you can." And by the time it was all said and done with the coach yelling at him, "Don't quit, you can do that," he went the full length of the field. And it just shows that you have to move goalposts, because even people within themselves don't understand what they can do.
Extending the parameters of the standard practice.
Exactly.
Exactly. So,
And that's what you're alluding to, right?
yes, that's what we need
You
to
know,
do.
you have to be able to do that fundamentally yourself in order to personally succeed, but sometimes that's why you do need a coach or a mentor, someone else to tell you, you can do better.
I was just wondering how it fit into your framework, the
Yeah.
idea of changing the parameters versus like having, within your mindful practice.
Well, so you're competing against somebody that you've never competed against before, and you've been successful, and he or she's got some unique movements. You might have to create something at that moment, or your coach might give you some idea of how to counter that. That's extending the parameters of what you've done before. You know that many of your players have certain skills, and you know this guy's back kick is great, this guy's roundhouse kick is great, but at this emergent moment, in this current opponent, you might have to do something and have the confidence of your coach to make you do it, to do something unique that you haven't done before, or create it yourself.
But does that have to happen on the playing field, or could it happen in the practice field? In your
Either, why not? I mean, if you have that mindset during practice, as Grandmaster Clark told me many times, as he told me many times, fight like you're in a fight, and then when you go into competitions, it'll be easier. You know very well about that.
Yeah, thank you very much for your presentation. You mentioned the Taekwondo spirit, right? And I was wondering how or what role this Taekwondo spirit plays in developing the intuition. Did I get that correctly? And could you elaborate more on that?
So Grandmaster Kim has, in his 4 or 5 year project with a number of other scholars, made the new reconceptualization of what Taekwondo spirit is, moving away from the aspects of the 5 tenets that have the Japanese past. In fact, in let me go back a bit. In 1990, we had the 3rd World Taekwondo Research Society event. It was the 3rd one. Dr. Yang Jibang was the Secretary General. And he invited this philosopher, this iconoclast, this philosopher Kim, Korea University professor, to give a keynote speech. And he prepared a paper for that presentation, for the conference. But a week before the presentation, a week before the conference, he was interviewed by the Korean press. This was 1990. And he started off, all the press is around. As you all know, Taekwondo, as we have it now, is merely a branch of Japanese karate. That's how he started. And then he talked about, we need to establish a new, uniquely Korean, of course based on Western sport, philosophical and education background, with Kukkiwan and the 1970 movement towards a Koreanization of the Kwan style, the Japanese and Chinese infested Taekwondo based on its nationalistic aversion to those colonizers. We need to establish a new, uniquely Korean philosophical basis for Taekwondo. And of course, his article was ripped out of the journal. When we came to the presentation, we came to this huge auditorium. There were 250 people there, and Dr. Yang said philosopher Kim Young-ok will not attend. Everybody left. I was the only non-Korean presenter. So, the research society was disbanded because philosopher Kim had exposed this Japanese, that everybody knew, this Japanese and Chinese influencing, and the WT and Kukiwan were not willing yet to accept the public acknowledgement of this. Well, when they restarted the Research Society in 2000, guess who they invited as an inaugural speaker? Philosopher Kim. Because his book that he wrote from that conference was in Korean, never been translated to English, was a hot topic